All right, welcome back to the Picking Your Brain podcast, where we interview people doing ministry at a high level. And on today's episode, we are lucky to have Austin Eakin. What's up, Austin?
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. This is
No,
exciting. So
oh yeah, I have a list of names of people that I want to bring on, and yours has been on there for a long, long time. So I was like, I got to find the right
yeah,
time. When can I bring the brother-in-law on? And season 4 kickoff is what I
yeah.
decided. So I'm so
I just
excited.
season 4. That's a lot of episodes, man. Brother-in-law should have been number 2, maybe. So
Well,
I don't know.
I didn't want people to think like he can't find nobody, so he's just bringing his brother-in-law on. So like I found
Yeah.
some people, and now it's kind of established. And I was like, let me bring on one of the goats now.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, yeah. That makes sense.
So so Austin, if someone may not know who you are, would you let them know where you're serving and what God had you doing right now?
Yeah, for sure. I am at Calvary Baptist Church in Shreveport. I serve as the student pastor, oversee our high school and our middle school, and also a small part of my job is to get to be the campus pastor of the academy and do some things with that, trying to connect some families and get the word out about what's going on at church to the academy, and so that's what I do. But again, I guess the best thing is I'm Blake Lewis's brother-in-law. So, but,
That's your claim to fame. That gets you in a lot of doors.
oh yeah, for sure.
No one cares. But so, and we'll probably touch on some of this too as we get through some of the questions. But you do have a very unique context that you serve at a church that has a pretty good sized school already attached, and so we'll dive into some of that. But
Yeah.
it's really cool how you navigate that and what you do, and so we'll touch on those as we go through the questions. But the format of the podcast is super simple. I'm just going to ask you a few of those questions about you as a minister, how you think through ministry, so we can all learn from you today. In the first question, I'm excited to hear how you answer this, but how do you, Austin, define success in your student ministry? We're all getting to probably the evaluation time of the year, kind of ending the year, kind of looking back how things went. And so, how do you determine if student ministry is being successful?
Yeah, yeah, and I think like anybody, that's it's tough to define that because
Yeah.
when you do see fruit of success, it's like really exciting. But for the most part, it's like, am I doing this for anything, right? But something that we have been saying, me and our middle school pastor Zeke Toops have been saying, is looking at not quantity of attendance but quality attendance, which would be successful. That in all of our different areas we would see a quality base of attendance that would go through all those areas. With all the areas that we have, real quickly, and we can hit on this in a
For sure.
a different question. But with chapel, Wednesday nights, Sunday mornings, and our home group, we recognize a group that's attending that, who is a part of all of those, who have different purposes and kind of a progression of thought, that if they're in all of those areas, it's showing that they're wanting more, because our home groups, kind of going backwards, are designated for, like, hey, we're talking about some real faith things, how we're going to live out our faith, how we're going to do this. And for someone who's like not interested in that, they're not going to attend. So again, one way we would define that is going, hey, quality attendance, not just quantity as in numbers, but recognizing some students that they're a part of all of those areas, and who are leaning in on that. Another one, which I guess kind of gets thrown around a lot, but again, looking at quality of this is students serving in different areas, and trying to give them opportunities for that, to serve in our kids ministry, to serve in other areas, to serve on Wednesday nights, to serve on Sunday mornings with the whole church. But looking at that, and having some conversations, like saying, hey, I need you to serve. I want you to serve. And then those students getting plugged into those areas. So that's two ways I would say I would define success, that we look at success, by, obviously, um, to give the pastor answer, right? Like I
Yeah.
hate to always have to like say it like that, but going like the ultimate goal would be, hey, I want students to come to know Jesus.
Hmm.
But with our kind of environment we got going on, there's a lot of students that do know Jesus. It would be that extra
Yeah.
step of going, like, are they actually following him? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we got students that hear about Jesus every day in Bible classes, in chapels,
Hmm.
students that go to church at other places here on the academy, and as they kind of funnel through into the church ministry, they know it like clearly. I mean, like
Hmm.
they know answers better than I do. Like they're going through basically seminary already, right? And but so that's why there's an emphasis on them going like taking that next step of just going like, no, yeah, I believe in Jesus. He saved me. Like he died for me. But going like, I'm actually going to follow him is kind of where we focus
Hmm.
on that success, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it does. Yeah. I was going to say, yeah. And for anybody that may not fully know Calvary or know anything about Calvary, yeah, it is a Christian Baptist school that is attached. And so, yeah, these kids are taught the Bible almost daily. They have chapels that Austin and Zeke are a part of that are middle school and high school specific, that they're getting taught scripture. Like Austin said, they maybe attend other churches or attend there. And so, yeah, having a head knowledge is not the issue for your kids. You know, like some
Yeah.
churches, their kids may not know anything about the Bible. And so the hard thing is building a foundation to even teach them biblical things. So your kids have that. So you're trying to think through, okay, how can I help them take that next step? So that to me is success. You know, that's kind of what
Yeah.
you're thinking. So you said home groups is kind of the big one where they get to choose to go. Could you, for just a moment, we may talk about it later, and if I'm overstepping, my bad. But but just what do home groups look like? Like, how do you organize that?
So we just have two right now, as in a high school and a middle school one.
Yeah.
And it's clear, like if they come not knowing what it is, like once they get there, it's clear, like, hey, this is the purpose of it. And it's just we just have we pick a house, kind of rotate through some adult leaders who are apart, kind of plugged into the ministry, and pick a house, and we show up and hang out in community for a little bit, and then we get to this point in the night where we all sit down and go, all right, let's talk about our faith in a deeper way. Not like let's discuss it. Let's not talk about some topical things, but going like how are we actually living out what we say we believe?
Mhm.
And again, that's clearly communicated. That's what the purpose of it is. So it kind of weeds out, not for the sake of going like y'all are more serious than others, but it kind of
Yeah.
weeds out some that are like, oh, I thought I was just going to hang out. Like the ones that are like, no,
Mhm.
I want to come talk about how we're actually going to like go accomplish what Jesus has called us to do. That's what home groups are for us. So
So do you have like a set of questions that you walk them through to kind of evaluate, or do you kind of just on the night kind of just say, "Hey, this is the direction we're going." What does that look like?
yeah, we do different things. Sometimes we use like maybe some videos from like Right Now Media,
Yeah.
or just some other questions. Right now, we're kind of just looking at Peter and like his life and his kind of progression of going from, like following Jesus, being all about Jesus, that then he denies Jesus, and then that kind of change of going like, oh no, I'm gonna go die for Jesus, like actually do that now. So
Mhm.
it just looks differently, but the specific of going like we're going to talk about not like struggles that we have, that's for other areas of ministry,
Yeah.
but going like how are we actually going to like live this out. So
Oh, I gotcha.
but, yep.
And so the second question kind of touches on this a little bit. And I've said this to you privately and I've said this to you publicly, behind your back, to your face, all the things. I think you're a phenomenal teacher.
Thanks,
You're
man.
one of my favorite people to listen to preach. And I'm not just saying that. So the question kind of lends on that is, how do you help students navigate through this culture with your teaching on Wednesdays and Sundays, maybe through home groups? Like, how do you organize your teaching to help a middle school, high school student walk through the different things that they're going to face to be a better follower of Jesus? And now we understanding your context specifically, they have a foundation. So how do you help your
Yeah.
teachings help them walk deeper with Jesus?
Yeah, for sure. So with that, like I have FaceTime with them teaching in chapel a smaller group on Wednesday, and then Sunday and home group, of course. But mainly those chapel and Wednesday times where it would be like I'm saying a lot to them then. And I appreciate privately, publicly, always you being very kind of how you appreciate my teaching. That means a lot to me, and thank you for saying that. But for that chapel time, and I realize, like, and I'll say this, like, I realize for our academy, again, there are a lot of students that go to other churches, but I take a responsibility for that chapel time, going like, God's put me in this place for this time. I want to do this well, so like I take the teaching time serious, right? And then on that Wednesday, of course, that's, not my group, but that's like our church group, right? That God has placed me over for this time, and I'd say helping them navigate it, man. Like not shying away from like hard topics, I guess. Not not and with that being said, not being too topical. Like, let's just talk about struggles, but like let's like talk about scripture, and but not just like for the sake of knowing it, but going like, how does this apply to like your high school life? Because that's who I mainly talk to. And just hitting those things where it's like, yeah, this is what you're facing, this is what you see. Talking about scripture and trying to connect those dots where it's like, yeah, this is why this is important. Like, this is why this is significant. Like tomorrow, we're starting a series called Too Much, and talking about just how to, like, things get out of balance and like priorities kind of get out of whack. And we talking about relationships and how we can overemphasize, dating relationships, friendships, whatever it is, and going like, let's talk about these things that like you deal with all the time. And not just sprinkle some scripture on it, but going, how does God see this? So that's kind of how I would say, in a crazy, messy way of going like, that's how I try to help them navigate the culture, just like just addressing some things that they deal with, and talking about it. And I hope it helps. You know what I mean? I would define that success in our small group time where they talk about it deeper with leaders, and then kind of having a follow up with the leaders that like they go deeper in the subject. So I would say I think it helps them just hitting these tough topics sometimes. So if that makes sense. So.
It does. So, and as I visit with student pastors and just kind of talk through their Wednesday nights, people always ask me all the time, what do my small group times look like? Because there's a lot of churches that haven't been able to transition to small groups yet. They're kind of wanting to do that. So, just for that guy that maybe is thinking, I want to do small groups, I have no clue what to make that look like. What does your small group time look like? Like, do you build the questions? Do you have, what does that look like for your small group time?
Yeah. So it's looked different in different ways, and starting in this new series we're in, it's gonna look different. But sometimes it is building the questions, as far as I just write them out that go along with the message, and then just hand them to the small group leaders, and they know what series we're in, they know what scripture we're in, so they're able to kind of prepare for that. And then our small group time would be obviously directly after the message. For the past few months, I've given them 5 just very generic questions that I did not make up myself, that I heard from someone else. And I thought it was great, but that they would say, did God speak to you tonight through the message? What was that? I'm gonna forget the questions now, but the other ones would be, hey, this past week, how did you feed your flesh? How did you feed others? And now I'm gonna mess this one up because you put me on the spot here.
Sorry, you're good.
But yeah, but some questions like that, going like, hey, let's talk about again, and they expect those questions every night, going, I'm going to be asked how I fed my flesh, how I fed others. I'm going to have to kind of give an account for that. Be vulnerable for a few minutes. This new season we're about to go message real heavy one week, and then the next week have a longer small group time, just to kind of mix it up and give some more time for discussion on these tough topics that we're about to discuss. So we always kind of mix it up a little bit, just kind of keep it fresh because it can easily get stale, as in like they expect the same thing over and over.
Yeah.
But that's some examples that we've done before.
So that's interesting. You know me probably better than anybody. I'm very systematic on how I do things. I know how I'm doing my first question, second, third, and I've done it the
Yeah,
same way for 5 or 6 years, and so I don't change
yeah,
mine up. And but that is interesting. I need to probably work in some of that. And I like how you said for that season, those students showed up knowing, hey, I'm gonna be asked, how did I feed my flesh? How am I feeding others? How did God speak to me? And so as they're sitting there preparing, listening to you talk, they're thinking through, how am I going to answer this? And it takes
yeah.
them looking introspectively. And then, anyway, no, I think that's interesting. That's really cool.
And that's
And
probably
so
more.
while
That's
we're
probably
talking
more.
about small groups and leaders and volunteers, and so you've been at Calvary for, say that again?
3 years. 3 years.
3 years. Okay. And
Mm-hmm.
so the adult volunteers, you had a great team when you first got there that were already serving. And so but you've also now had to bring on some new leaders. And so when you're looking for leaders, what characteristics do you look for when you're choosing adult volunteers? And then how do you onboard them to be either a small group leader, a home group leader, from the easiest position you have all the way to the most sacred position that you have? What does that look like?
Yeah, for sure. I I think it's definitely not an age thing. I get people a lot who are like, I'm too old for student ministry, and definitely like people that genuinely are kind, for sure. That are not going to be like
Yeah.
too harsh, or like if a high school boy, like, because that would be like kind of crazy if a high school boy comes to someone and is like, I got anxiety, like, I'm not going to try to find a guy that's like, shut up, like, you don't have problems, like, get over it. But someone who's kind and like cares, and as simple as this is, but I mean, it's a deeper conversation, talking to them, just going like, hey, like if you truly do love Jesus and like do what he tells you to do, and like, and you care for the next generation, like, yeah, you can be a volunteer in the student ministry, and we can teach you how that looks,
Mhm.
and goes from there. Onboarding them, a lot of times it starts with that initial conversation. It starts with which I'm learning. I'm not good at this at all, so I'm not going to act like a expert in it. But it comes from just like, I can't have a public announcement, we need volunteers, but it's like
For
starting to
sure.
see people that like are gifted in those areas, that are kind, that do love Jesus, that do love people, and going up to them and going, hey, I have a real need right now, and God put you on my heart, and on my mind, and if you see it fit, or if you feel like God's leading you to do this, would you be interested in serving? So having those just one-off conversations a lot, which
Yep.
can get exhausting, right? Especially whenever
Hmm.
they say no, and you're like, well, I was sure that I feel
Yeah.
like God was leading me to talking to you. But having them, and then letting them jump on board, and not just throw them out in the deep end, but usually pairing them with someone else who's been involved. And I don't know if I stole that from you. I stole a lot of stuff from you, but uh, but uh,
Whatever.
letting them kind of be paired with someone else who does it well, and kind of see kind of the process of that. And we
Yeah.
try to keep it as simple as possible for the leader, and what is going on, as far as like the task that they have, or like the job that they have, and keeping it focused on them just knowing the students, and helping them grow. And we emphasize this a lot, like knowing who you're talking to, not just like, hey, not just like regurgitating the message and like saying it a different
Mhm.
way, but like knowing the student and talking to the student, and and I don't know, like, we have volunteers that have been with me for all 3 years. We have some that come for a couple months, and they roll out, and it's it's always just a kind of a up and down, kind of ebb and flow of volunteers, but I don't know, that's what we do. So
Yeah, two things I wanted to highlight that if you're a younger youth pastor listening, like that, I think is pivotal. Is one, you say something that I say a lot to my leaders too, is that I can't make you love teenagers. I can't make you have the desire to want to see teenagers grow closer to Jesus. I can help you teach. So like if you have that desire, if you want to help that, then I can help you. So a lot of them say, man, I can't teach a class, I can't teach a small group. Say you can. I can teach you how to do that. I can't teach you how to
Yeah,
love teenagers. And so if you have that, then you're a great volunteer. Let me help you kind of on board in that process. And then I love what you said is that you have multiple one-on-one conversations with leaders trying to get them to on board. Because what a lot of I just spoke at a conference a few weeks ago, and that was one of the sessions was on volunteers, and there were several guys who meant well, just saying I can't get volunteers. He said, I don't even know how to train them because I can't get volunteers. And I think a lot of
yeah,
times because guys are thinking people are just going to show up and say, hey, how can I serve? And then one of the questions I asked the guys was, okay, if you had a volunteer that showed up this Wednesday night to your service, what would you have them do? And all of them looked at me and was like, I don't know. I just want them to hang out with teenagers. And I was like, well, they're not going to do that. So you need to have specific roles and specific
yeah,
jobs for people to feel. And so I love that you said you're having those one-on-one conversations of like, hey, I'd love for you to come on. I need a eighth grade boy small group leader. Is that something you'd want to do? And then you help partner them with somebody that can show them the ropes how to do it. And that to me is how you keep people long term because they're not just thrown to the wolves, but they're able
yeah,
to kind of see how that is done. And so if you're
for
a young
sure.
youth pastor, those are two great things that I think you
Yeah.
touched on.
I want to say this too.
Yeah, yeah,
I think it's important not only on the front end, but to have personal conversations with leaders on the like long term as well. Going checking in, going like, how was your
yeah,
small group? How's everything going? And that's when they're not necessarily going to come to you and be like, everything's falling apart. Like, especially depending on the size of your group. But if you have those conversations, they're like, man, my group's, I'm struggling a little bit. Like I'm struggling to connect with them, and like you can kind of help them there, or having conversations where like not just publicly because not everybody wants that, but privately going like, hey, you're doing a great job, and like that keeps people
yeah.
along too. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, no, and that's something I stole from one of my episodes with Billy Lonsberry. If y'all want to go back and check it out, it was really good. But Billy said that he does a youth or a volunteer checkup every week. And so he'll have a list of his volunteers and he'll circle three or four of them and he'll send them a call or a text on Tuesday, I think was his day. And so what I've started doing for me is Mondays. I'll circle two or three of my volunteers, shoot them a text. Hey, praying for you this week. How is eighth grade girls small group going? Is that going good on Wednesday nights? Or how is Sunday morning going? Are you having trouble with Susie? I know she's been a handful, or whatever, but if you can, like, I love what you're saying. Just if you can just do that little touch to check on them, not just, hey, come serve, you do all this stuff on the front end and then just kind of let them go, but
yeah,
continuously check on them is so, so big. I'm not great at that yet. I do have a text message every Monday or a reminder, it's volunteer checkup. I don't do it great, but I want to do better. That's a good,
yeah,
that's a good word too. All right. So something else I wanted to touch on is because of your church and kind of your setup, you have more of a mobile setup, almost like a church
hmm
plant. Y'all set up in a gym and like and
yeah,
get everything going every Wednesday. So how do you make the most of the space that you have? And then how do you help students buy in to they don't have a youth room that's got gaga ball and all this stuff in it, which when most student pastors think we have to have that in order for students to
yeah,
attend, and you have proven that is not true because y'all are averaging well over 100 now, just absolutely killing it with a mobile setup. And so so explain kind of what that looks like, and then how do you make the most out of that?
yeah. So, yeah, just the like the practical side of the mobile setup. It's in our
Yeah,
gym, which is like I don't know what the word would be, but it's like a large gym. You know what I mean? Like you got two
yeah,
sides to it. So with that, like of course we set up on one side of the gym. There's curtain that comes down. Other side they can play basketball, whatever. But it's it's a nice thing in a way. Like you kind of get tired of having to set up every week. But it's
yeah,
nice to go. I can change this anytime I want. Like it don't have to be the same every week. It can, and again, that might be more of a personality thing with me, just always changing stuff and rearranging. My office always gets rearranged,
yeah,
but it's like you can change it all the time, and it almost well, like when you make changes like that to the mobile setup, it almost can like help kind of like shift some momentum or like change some things, because it's kind of like a new exciting look or whatever. And I know that's like that's probably like real detailed, and no one probably thinks about that, but it's able to kind of be like, hey, we have something new, and then it's going to look new and it's going to be brand new. So in a way it's a pain, in a way it's like, oh, this is nice. But we make the most of the space being and we try to do this. I'm not going to say we do this like 100% well, or like I can't say like we're just knocking it out of the park. But kind of going back to that leader question, we try to just emphasize like the relationship a little better than the space. Because one more time, as I've said all throughout this, heavy Calvary Baptist Academy presence, they go to school here all the time. Like, they don't care about the space. They don't care about the gym. They're like, this is just the gym. This is just the whatever. So those relationships, it's kind of like, if those relationships aren't working, if those relationships aren't the focus, like it's just they're at school still, and like they don't care. So focusing on that. But with the setup again, you kind of be unique with that and change some things, and it helps out. And there is a little bit of like, hey, we go to a basketball game here, but we also like worship here on Wednesdays. Like, I think there is a little feel there that's good. But mainly those relationships, and going just providing a place where like they're gonna feel love. They're gonna feel like they matter. They're gonna feel like they're gonna hear about some stuff that they're really struggling with, and providing a place like that. So it is wild having to set up every week, but it's what we do, and it works. It works for now, that's for sure. So
awesome. And we'll move on to the fifth question. It kind of touches on that, and kind of really we've touched on this question a little bit throughout that whole episode. But how do you empower students from being that sitter, that attender, that goes to school at Calvary Baptist Academy, that maybe will come on a Wednesday night? How do you move them from just sitting head knowledge of who Jesus is to that leader that's going out and actually being the hands and feet of Jesus, taking ownership of their faith and living that out?
Yeah.
So how do you kind of final words on how do you try to empower students to become that?
Yeah. Well, for one, biblically, it would be we're going to emphasize the things that Jesus calls us to do, right? Like and that goes back to me going, we're topical a lot of times, going like, hey, this is what you're struggling with, but it ain't just topical. Like, hey, it's going to be okay, buddy. No, but it's like, no, like, this is what you're facing, but this is what Jesus has called you to do, and like, go do that, and emphasizing that in a way of going, Jesus has the best plan for your life. It might not look like what the world looks. It might not look like what you think it looks, but following him will always lead to more fulfillment and more satisfaction. So emphasizing that a lot, saying, go do what Jesus has told you to do, because that's what's going to lead to the best life possible for you. And then the other kind of more practical way, talking about getting them serving, it is kind of like those conversations with the adult leaders, walking up to some students that I recognize are wanting to live this out a little more, and having some specific conversations with them, going, hey, I need you to serve with me in the kids area this Sunday. And that's something we've set up, going, we're going to take one Sunday a month where we're going to lead kid worship, and that works for us. And say this past Sunday, 2 days ago, I had a conversation 4 days prior to that with a group of about 8 or 9 students, and I said, hey, I really need you, specifically you, to come help me in the kids ministry this Sunday. And it wasn't like a mass text like, hey, come help me, because I've tried that, and that does not work. That's usually my story, is I've tried stuff and it doesn't work. But having a conversation with some specific ones, going, hey, I need you to come help me. And I think having that one-on-one, rather than just like a public, hey, come do this, going like, hey, I see what God's doing in your life, and I want you to come do this, or I want you to serve here, I want you to do this. It helps go from them just being like, hey, I'm just here, to like they're wanting to lead, and they're wanting to take charge, and they're wanting to again go from sitting to leading, and that's just what we do.
And yeah, I love that mind shift from like when you're trying to recruit adult volunteers, you have to have a role, you have to have a plan. That's the best way to onboard them. But so if you're wanting students to lead, if you have a student ministry and you have some stud students that you know can serve, you need to create ways for them to lead. Now, that's exactly what you're doing, is saying, hey, I'm reaching out. I want you to be a part of X, Y, and Z, and here's how you're going to do that. And so if you're a student pastor here listening and you're thinking, man, I want students to lead, I want them to help run slides on ProPresenter in the back. Well, teach them how to do that. You know, I'm wanting them to lead games on Wednesday night. I know for me, that's a huge thing, that we have students on stage leading games on Wednesday night. So that's something we had to teach them how to do that, give them opportunities. Were they horrible the first year of leading games? Yes, they were so bad. It was so cringy. But once they started doing it, learning how to do it, and then those students now are doing discipleship. They're, for games, but they're now teaching the next group how to do it. And they're going to teach the next group, and they teach the next group. And so that's how leadership is supposed to be. So you as a leader have to step up, find those opportunities for them to lead, teach them how to do that, and then allow them to teach the next group, to teach the next group. And so, so if you're listening and you're a student pastor, man, find opportunities and equip them to do that. So anyway, man, Austin, that's fun. That's a lot of good stuff there, man. Man. And I do, like I've said, your context is so unique, and I guess we've always talked about it. I've never really thought that deep about it. Of like, yeah, your students know Jesus, but you have the job now of taking them that one step further of how can they actually live it out. And I think you're killing it there at Calvary. They're lucky to have you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Again, I take everything that you tell me. I'm like, I'm just going to do that. Do what Blake does, because Blake knows best. So.
Blake does not know best. Blake has talked to a bunch of people, and I'm good at regurgitating everything that I've learned. But anyway, well, again, thank you so much for being a part of this episode, kicking off season 4. So I'm already looking forward to all the different people we'll have on as we all going to learn together. So if this is your first time listening to the Picking Your Brain podcast, make sure you subscribe on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever it is you listen to podcasts. We'll be dropping episodes, probably not as frequent as I've done in the past. I'm probably not going to do every Monday. So I'm going to do more as the episodes come along. So just plug in, turn notifications on so you can get it. But this is the first of a great season we have planned. So catch y'all soon.